Well, and we're live. Hey, welcome everybody.
Wow.
And thank you very much for joining us here in the living room. We're live, and this is actually our first live show that we've done.
Wow.
Thank you so much for joining us. I hope everyone's had a great week. As usual, it's me, I'm Andre, and I'm here with my good friends, Philip and Mark. And we just always have a Caribbean conversation. Wherever that takes us, we just like to have that conversation about what's going on in the Caribbean and what's going on with Caribbean people in the wider world as well. And today we're going to do a very special show regarding racism in the United States and as it relates to Caribbean and the Caribbean experience there. So we're going to have that conversation. Without any further ado, let's just get to it. Hey guys, how's it going?
Doing good.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm good. Interesting week. Quite a special week for me, I think.
How so?
Well, you know, to be honest, having reached this age and to have never gone on a protest, it feels really odd. But look, I went on my first protest this week. Black Lives Matters, and it was a very defining moment for me, I think.
Yeah, for me too, actually. I did also. On Tuesday, I went to the march in London. You know, it's a very interesting, a weird time, actually, because, you know, as a Black person, it's amazing how these things happen. You see them happening time and time again, especially United States and other places as well. But for whatever reason, this is kind of the first one that really convicted me to get involved. And I haven't before. Yeah. And that's really the conviction. And this one is really convicting me to get involved with.
Yeah, I must say I'm the odd one out. I didn't go to any of the protests. We had a really large one here in Manchester. Not that I decided really that I wanted to stay away, but I spent a lot of my time just conversing with friends, and not my Caribbean, not my Black friends, but really my circle of white friends who really engaged and poured out. And I've not seen that before. So there's something significant about this. I had people call in to check in, to ask questions. I was writing. I did a lot of writing. You know, I do loads of writing. But it just felt like a good time to reflect and to just have honest conversation with people.
I saw you being very, very active across social media, setting a few things right, if I can use that phrase.
Yes, I saw as well.
Grace and truth, Mark.
Grace and truth.
That's how I roll.
Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't have to be one or the other. You can have both.
No, you need both. Yeah.
And rightfully so, because I think the fascinating thing in this season is just how people don't fully appreciate their own cultural position until they start talking about these issues now that they're bubbling to the fore. And some of the things that I've seen across social media has been so shocking. And then when you think about who's saying it, it's been unbelievable.
Yeah, I think I put a post out that, you know, folks don't really understand what institutionalism is. And some of their posts are actually the very reflection of what it is. Yeah. I think it's very easy to say institutionalism when you're thinking about an organization. But the fact of the matter is, organizations actually impact how people think in wider society. And you saw a lot of those things being borne out in some of the, quite frankly, insensitive posts that we saw in some cases all across Facebook and what's not. Philip, I'm sure you saw me involved in a few heated conversations.
We know you can.
Yeah. I try to keep calm as much as I can, but that doesn't always work.
I remember sending you a message saying, "Do not respond."
Honestly, and the thing is,
minute I look back, I saw,
man, gone.
Because I saw your message as soon as I hit send, and I tried, you know, I saw the message there, and I was like, "Don't respond, just leave it, just leave it." Yeah. But I couldn't help it because
that must last about 30 seconds.
It needed a response, and I think that's the thing as well, as I was saying about the conviction I have about this season, which not that I didn't have it before, but really to be active, to get involved, to get in the conversation. Like you, I spoke to a lot of my white friends, or even not necessarily white friends, just people I saw commenting on different posts, and and I actually began to engage, and not necessarily from what do you call it? from an aggravation or aggravated position, but just really to get people to understand an education perspective, to get people to really understand what they're saying and what they're seeing, and why what they're saying can no longer really be tolerated. And we've been tolerating it for quite a long time. And I'm just done with that.
And you say we've been tolerating it. I think the thing that really struck a dagger to my heart this week was I said to my son, would you like to go to the Black Lives Matter protests in Birmingham? And without the batting of an eyelid, he said straight away, yes, I got to be there. And that just kind of floored me, because it just made me realize how engaged the generation that's following us. They are very, very switched on to the dialogue. They are actively across social media, watching to see who's doing what and wanting themselves to take an active role in this conversation. And I think the thing that really made me sit up and take notice was actually, if he's going to become courageous, if all of these young people are going to become courageous, we have to demonstrate to them how to be courageous.
Completely agree. I had the same reaction from my daughter Ariel. I think sometimes we can be, I don't want to say complacent, but we can be a bit responsible, if we don't, or irresponsible rather, if we don't educate our kids about these things. Sometimes we could be a little bit too protective because they're not at the age to hear it yet. But actually, they're actually having these conversations at school. And I was going to the march, and I didn't tell her I was going. I was just going, but she overheard me speaking to someone saying I was going. She just broke down. And then she looked up and said, I have to be there.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, wow. The grandparents weren't too happy that I took her in that environment, but that's a different conversation altogether.
You should say hello to them in case they're watching.
I hope,
I'm sure they probably are.
If the grandparents are watching, Good evening.
But now, just to see her confidence and a little bit of sidebar, there was a photo on the news of her and her friends and myself there as well. So we actually made the BBC. So now she's feeling like a little bit of a rock star, being involved in that environment and just saying, we're taking on the fight. So, I thought it was pretty important for her to be there.
Wow. Nice. So who have we got in the living room today then?
Yeah, so the living room is going to be pretty interesting. As I say, we're dealing with racism in the USA, the Caribbean experience. And today we have, three very different people, but same, because we're from the Caribbean. We got Taj, who's a St. Lucian living in Long Island. We got Claudette, who's a Jamaican living in Florida. And we also have Karen, who's a Bajan living in New Jersey. And I think this is a really interesting conversation for us as well, because, even across social media, I've been looking at it, I've been seeing people, in the Caribbean thinking or saying sometimes, not everybody, obviously, but the conversation is going a lot like, why are we in the Caribbean marching? Our countries are 90, 80, 95% Black. Why are we taking up a cause in the US? We've got our own issues. Why are we not dealing with it? Yes, we've got our own issues in the Caribbean, separate conversation. However, consider this a little bit. Across the United States, you got 13 million people who are of Caribbean descent who live there. So our family is there. You got 4.5 million people who migrated to the US between 1980 and 2017. 4.5 million roughly. And then in any given year, we can have 11,000 of our students who are actually studying in the United States. If we think of all those numbers, 90% of so of them are non-white. The racism issue in America is a Caribbean issue. And it's our story. And it's only right that we get involved and we have those conversations. And the Caribbean man, the West Indian, are in those stories. Don't forget as well, I think Botham Dean, I think his name was, he was from St. Lucia, I believe, as well, who was shot last year by someone opening his front door and a police officer shot him. And, so there's very much loads of Caribbean stories within racism in the USA. And yes, we should get involved.
Absolutely.
And we share the same origins, of course. Our stories go back 450 years.
Exactly.
Same origin. So yeah, you're right. It is really a Caribbean story as well.
It is. I mean, just across the three of us, I'm sure we can pick somebody in our family who currently lives in the United States.
I have tons of family who live in the United States.
Exactly.
Actually. So it's very much our story. And also, one of the more important points as well, not just dealing with the United States of itself, but American culture is probably the most exportable culture in the world. Everyone is looking at America, whether it's news, whether it's television shows and what's not. And how they treat people and how they deal with issues many societies across the world take their cue from that. We travel all over the world. So issues about racism outside the region impacts us as well.
Yeah.
You know, and speaking of which, we've got Taj, Karen, and Claudette here. So I think we should just go ahead and let them in. Hey guys.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome to the living room. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
My people.
Yep, we're all one, right?
I see Taj there with a rather large glass, so that's why I said my people, because I know, you know.
Water.
I know, brother. I know. Listen, we've got quite a few people watching our show today, and obviously the living room is a place where we have conversation. So let's just first of all introduce you guys to our audience, starting with you, Claudette.
Hi, everyone. I'm Claudette Powell. I was born and raised in America, but I was born in New York. Was there for a few years of Jamaican parentage, obviously. And then I moved to Florida and went to high school here, went to university here, worked in broadcasting and communications for a radio station here and a television station for a few years. And then I upped and moved to Jamaica in 1998 and was there for 18 years. And I moved back in 2016 back to Florida. So that's my basic story in a nutshell. So I have life of America and Jamaica.
I bet you will have a very interesting story to tell as we get going this evening.
Yeah.
Okay. What about yourself, Taj?
Taj Weeks, St. Lucia. I've been living in America for 30, 40 years.
Wow.
Something like this. Yeah. I play music. I have a band, Taj Weeks in Adore. We have 6 albums out, and we've been on the road for forever. So I know what it is like to deal with police on the road regularly. I am the Goodwill Ambassador to St. Lucia, brand ambassador to St. Lucia, and the UNICEF champion to St. Lucia. So yeah, that's my story in a nutshell.
Okay, excellent.
Welcome.
And of course, last but by no means least, Karen.
Yes. Hi, I'm Karen Reed, and Mark, you said I'm from New Jersey. I actually live in Brooklyn. New York.
My bad.
No problem. No problem. I'm in the heart of the West Indies here in the U.S.
Wow.
So I'm from Barbados. I've lived in New York for the past 34 years. I am married and have 2 sons, a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old. My family, my great-grandmother, Ethel Rice, moved to the U.S. in 1919.
Wow.
So I can say I have roots here, even though I came later, I'm currently working in a human services organization. I've worked in the field for the past 27 years.
Wow.
Good to be here.
No, well, welcome all 3 of you. And listen, we're looking forward to your insights, your experience. And of course, I'm sure many people who are watching this evening will also be looking forward to contributing and even asking any questions that they might have. So we were having a conversation, you and I, Karen, not too long ago. And whilst we are talking about racism in America, everybody has a different experience, okay? Yeah. And I'm sure you mentioned recently you had your first encounter with the police, and I wonder if you can share that with our audience this evening.
Yeah, actually, it wasn't necessarily the first encounter. It was the first encounter where I questioned, why I was being pulled over.
Okay.
And even at that point, I didn't necessarily think of it as, racism per se, but later on, as I reflect on it, I said, what if? So it was about 3 weeks ago, I was going to a home in Carmel. I had some work to do there. I was very dressed down, driving up to Carmel, which I've been doing for the past 12 years. My uncle actually lived there, so I'm accustomed driving there. It's a long road and, 65 miles an hour. So, I have to really watch myself on the road. So I was in the left lane going to 65 miles an hour, and I saw sirens up ahead. There was one car pulled over and a car behind, cop car with that car that was pulled over. And then there was another cop car behind that. So there were actually 2 cop cars. Mm-hmm. It was in the shoulder, but it was, slightly protruding to the left lane. So I had to go into the middle lane to go around. And, I'm doing 65. I know I'm good. Mm-hmm. I slowed down to go over into the middle lane. There was cars oncoming. And I got into the lane, go back over to the left lane, and I saw this siren behind me. And that morning I was in a very peaceful place, and I, subconsciously I said, no matter what happens today, I'm staying calm. And, it doesn't matter what the cop has to say when he comes. So first thing, the cop came, white cop, and came and he asked for my license and registration, which I handed over. And he asked me, do you know why I pulled you over? And I said, no, I have no idea. And, he explained to me he pulled me over because I didn't accelerate fast enough to overtake the cop cars that were parked in the shoulder. Wow. And I was like, okay. He explained it to me 3 times because I still didn't understand all the explanations. I'm like, it doesn't matter how you put it. I still don't get it. As I said, I was determined to be calm. So, and I addressed him as officer. And, then he asked if I had any, he said, I'm not going to ticket you. And then I wanted to say, well, why did you pull me over? Anyhow, he said, do you have any points on your license? He said, I'm going to go run your license. And he ran my license. Within a few minutes, he came back, giving my license and told me to have a good day. And I left. And I was, I was going to do stuff. So I went ahead, taking care of what I needed to do. But then I took a break and I sat down and reflected on what just happened.
Wow.
And the first name that came to me was Sandra Bland. And I said, well, what if? Yeah. What if, in this, first of all, he came without the mask, and that kind of, he had no gloves, no mask. And I'm like, I was a little disturbed, but, I had my mask. Even though I was driving, I had it on. And, I said, okay, I'm not even going to make an issue. But then I said, what if I had just been displaced, didn't have a job, and I was just really under pressure and responded to him differently. What if my husband, was late? What if I had a reason to be, really upset, and the
agitated,
slightest thing would trigger me? And, I said, what if I had to get out of that car and for any reason, and what would the outcome have been? So I went about doing what I had to do, and I came home that evening very late. I didn't get home till after 10, and then I sent out a post, and it was, what if, and I'm like, and I'm gonna cut this. I know you have to speak to the others,
but that's fine.
I actually, my CEO is very aware of everything that's going on and wants to be a part of the solution. So he called together a town hall with all of us, and we discussed these things openly. And I told him of my experience, and he told me he had a similar experience.
Well,
however, the difference is, he says he went after that cop. He got the badge. And that's when I started to say, well, the difference between how me being Black and him being white responded.
Wow.
Yeah.
He thought, I wasn't going to go after it. I didn't get a ticket. I was okay. Nothing came out of it. And I said, you know what? I'm leaving it alone.
Wow.
Yeah.
But he said, he went after that cop because he pulled him over for a stupid reason. And he got his badge, went to the precinct, made a complaint, all those things. Things that I said, I'm good.
And I was going to say, I think it's interesting to hear that story, because for me, all I'm thinking about the thought process that as a Black person in the US, having that encounter with police that you have to go through, during that encounter, that it would seem your CEO, and probably, presumably because of race, he doesn't feel he has to go through that thought process or be hesitant in standing up for his rights.
Yeah.
And that's interesting, because one of the hashtags that I see going around recently around the same conversation is tired.
Yeah.
And I think it's such an apt hashtag, because I think people are just tired of that having to be the thought process with every encounter with law enforcement, or even sometimes with senior management, or just someone in the park, as we just saw recently happening in New York, and that lady was pretty much saying, you didn't think this through. You didn't think about your position. Forget what she said when she called the police, but it's the thought process that there. And it seems like that people have to go through that thought process with almost every encounter in the US.
Yeah, we have to think about every scenario.
Well, the word that you used there that was very interesting as you were speaking was determination. It was a very, very conscious effort to make sure that you do precisely maybe what your mom or your parents or others have told you before, because I know everybody has these conversations with their kids in America about, if you get stopped by the cops, this is what you do. Suddenly you probably fell into that moment in terms of determination.
Pretty much. The only regret is that I didn't record this. And I'm thinking to myself, people are gonna hear this and think that I'm not, and of course, I'm making it up. And I'm like, a lot of people go through this, they never believed because they don't have a recording, there's nothing to prove. So it's your word against the officers, and I'm like, wow, this is very real. So as you just say, I after George's death, I'm like, enough is enough. Enough is enough.
Can I jump in there for a second?
Of course, that's
I think the issue for most of us, people of African descent, is that every stop is a 50-50 chance.
Yeah.
And that is the issue. That is the issue that a lot of people do not understand. Most of my white friends don't even think about it. Listen, when I'm in St. Lucia and I hear the siren, I know it's not for me. You know what I mean? I don't look back, I don't tense up, I don't have to worry. And if it's for me, I know it will be a pleasant exchange.
Yeah. Yes,
so
very different.
As soon as you hear the siren, you tense up. This is not healthy.
Yeah.
And that is what these brothers do not understand.
I'm going to jump in when you say that's not healthy, because my professor, a longtime professor, we're good friends, and she said to me, one of the underlying conditions, health conditions for Blacks is high blood pressure.
Oh, man.
That's not just because, we are under so much pressure that it affects us that way. That's why our blood pressure stays that way, And I'm like, wow, I never thought of it that way.
Wow.
I saw a publication on that. It's very true.
Yeah, I have to look into it more, because she pointed it out to me.
You want to jump in, Claudette? I'll share an article with you, Karen, about black women and black mothers in particular. That really laid that quite bare to me.
I saw that. Yeah.
Claudette, your experience.
Well, it's weird. It's so funny because I'm 25 years of broadcasting journalism experience. And just a few months of law enforcement experience, because now I'm with the Broward Sheriff's Office right here in South Florida. And my brother has been a police officer with the Broward Sheriff's Office for 30 years. So needless to say, before I got into law enforcement, me and my brother always had a lot of conflict going on because I was talking from a civilian perspective. He was talking from a police perspective. I haven't really had, I had a couple of stops that were questionable, but really and truly, I had a lot of microaggression from work, especially being in broadcasting. I remember I changed my hairstyle, and one of the guys in the newsroom, I used to work at the station called Channel 10 here in Miami. And I had my braids, put in my braids, and he had a whole bunch to say about my hair. And I was just like, anybody else could change their hairstyle. You wouldn't hear a word. A white lady could, change her color and no one would say anything. And
that's a question there, Claudette.
Yeah.
The term microaggression. Because to be honest, these sort of terms growing up in Barbados, I never encountered.
Yeah.
I never heard those terms until I moved to the UK.
Yeah, it's basically where people of other races kind of throw out little jabs, subliminal jabs about you, about the way you look, about your nose, about your lips, about, you know what I mean? Can I touch your hair? You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, I don't walk around and start just touching white people's hair just randomly. You know what I mean? But white people have, oh, can I? I'm grown. Why are you touching? I'm not a kid. Also, you didn't ask me. You just went in. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm talking about. The guy talking about my hair, that's a form of a microaggression. I really felt just a little racism. One day I was driving my Jeep and I had my little music on, my top down. I was, feeling good in my heart. And these two white dudes drove up next to me and screamed in the car, "Go back to Africa." And I'm like,
wow.
I would have kept completely calm in that situation, guys. Just letting y'all know.
Of course.
Go back to Africa. What the fuck? I'm going about my business.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? So I turned down my music and I looked at them and I started laughing. I mean, laughing, like he said the most funniest thing. And I said, "That's all you got? Go back to Africa, that's all you got?" I said, "Yeah, Africa's a really great place." And I turned it up because what they want is to make you angry.
Yeah.
They want to hurt you. It's all about throwing jabs to hurt you. And because everything inside of me, don't get me wrong, everything inside of me wanted to cuss them from head to toe, talk about go back. I would have been like, "What about your race?" And I would have went in. You're not even from here. You stole the lands from the Native Americans. Like, I could have went all the way.
I hear you on that one.
Yeah, but I just wanted to make them feel stupid in the moment. That was more important to me. Where you didn't get me. It wasn't a gotcha. You know what I mean? So it's those type of things that we're getting back to. Tired of that.
Yeah.
Like, just go back. You go about your business. I go back. As long as we're not, I'm not doing anything that is physically harming you or your family. You have no reason to say anything to me like that.
Well, listen, you mentioned in the introduction that you actually up sticks and went back to Jamaica.
Yes.
How was that experience?
What happened there?
I got super, super tired.
Okay.
Yeah, I was really done. I went to the University of Florida, which is in upstate Florida, and very country because it's progressive inside where the school is, sorta, but outside not so much. But just being in somewhere that's so predominantly white all the time is tiring for people, especially somebody like me who my parents, especially my father, instilled this Caribbean lifestyle in our family. Like, I never knew that I would never say that I was a African American, because there's no way. We were too Jamaican, too Caribbean, you know what I mean? That it was pro-Africa, pro-Cuban at the time. He was just like, he was just pro pro just about,
the Caribbean,
your heritage and your background. We had been going to Jamaica every 2 years. So I was very connected to the island. So it wasn't something new where it was like, like a lot of African Americans do not know what it feels like to see police officers, store owners, up until 2008, the president being of their color, you know what I mean? So to me, I'm used to seeing, rich people, rich Black people, just Black people in everything. So it wasn't really, so my whole thing was I was young and I was just like, I don't, have any ties. And I just wanted to know what it felt like to live in Jamaica, to be on an island, to explore my heritage a little bit more. And it was greatest experience I had. I mean, I literally, like, they had to drag me back to America. And one of the reasons why I was afraid to come back was because of becoming a minority again.
Yeah.
It's so fabulous being a majority.
I can imagine.
Like Taj was saying, when the sirens go, they're not coming for me. Even if I'm stopped by a police officer, the police officer's like, "Oh, CP, oh, I heard you on the radio." Whole different interaction.
Yes, it is.
So what about yourself, Taj? You know, as a musician, I'm sure you've traveled the length and breadth of the USA, I'm sure. Any experiences yourself that you've experienced?
Yeah, I have lots. I've had lots of experiences. But I want to tell you about one particular experience I had in Brooklyn. We drove into Brooklyn one time and I double parked on the street to go use the bank. Well, there were lots of other cars on the street as well. And, you know, somebody said they're giving tickets outside. So I ran outside and they were giving tickets. But they were also trying to tow away the cars as well. And I know the law says if you're not hooked up, you can back out, right? So I was telling the officer, "Yo, listen, it's not hooked up. You don't have to take it because the tow truck came." So I went in the car and I backed up about, you know what I mean? Just, you know, when you just pull it past reverse and you put it back. And by the time I was done, he had a gun to my head.
Oh,
Whoa.
What?
wow.
He said, "We're taking this car today." You know, it's funny that this story, I didn't remember. I blocked it out.
Wow.
The wife reminded me of it. You know, so this is the kind of stuff that we have to put up.
Wow.
You have to block things out of your head sometimes because the way you may want to react will not be the right way to react. But dig this. So he puts a gun to my head and I would not have reacted the way I reacted now. I hit the gun away.
Wow.
And
Serious?
Kill me for a pocket spot. You know? So I got out of the car. They took it anyway. Right? I had to go someplace in the back by the water to pay for the car. And the thing is, too, you know, these things are so unfair. These brothers take your car and charge you per mile to take it to where they need to take it. You know, and I see all this is a system that is set up to squeeze the little man as much as they possibly can. They've already put black and brown people in the little man's spot. So they keep on keeping the foot on your neck. All the time. You see? And like Shopton said, you know, all we need is the breathing space and we can function.
That's it.
I agree.
It's because you would not have done that to somebody else.
Yes.
You know? But anyway, I went to court. Sorry, I'm coming back. So I got the car and everything. And about 6 months after, I'm walking down in Brooklyn and I see this brother on the other side of the street. And I say to the wife, "This is the brother, you know." So she goes over to him and she says, "Do you remember this man?" And he said, "No, you know." And I was thinking to myself, these brothers do so much wickedness to so many people. They don't remember who the people are.
Exactly.
You know? And if we were vigilantes, you know what I mean? Big man, you have to treat people right. I do not, you know, it's difficult for me to truly understand racism. Though I am a victim of it regularly.
Yes.
But I still don't have that bone in me. I think I have bone in my body to hit somebody based on the color. You know? So I think that is my, I'm sorry, that is my fight with this thing all the time. How can I look at you and say, this brother is too dark, I can't deal with him, or this brother too light? This is not for me. I don't understand it. But it's a learning experience for all of us.
Karen, you want to say something?
No, he said something that kind of resonated with me in terms of not understanding racism. It's like, you know, I don't know of your all's experience, but, you know, growing up in Barbados, you knew it existed, but we always saw a path forward. You know, it's like personally, you know, I never felt I couldn't achieve this, or I never felt hopeless. You know, I never felt as though there were barriers to stop me from doing whatever it is I wanted to do. So I came here and, you know, they may have been some issues that could have been considered racist, but it didn't, it just rolled off me because You know, we came here with a purpose, determined to achieve, you know, by any means necessary. Hard work.
Karen,
you know.
If I can jump in there, I was saying to you, you said you felt a little bit of racism in Barbados.
No, I didn't.
You didn't? Okay.
No, never.
All right.
Never.
In my Caribbean experience, I didn't know that.
That's it. That's why I said we didn't know it, because we didn't know it.
A lot in Caribbean land, even though, you know what I mean? I just knew him. He spoke like me. We did the same things. So I never felt that. And I think that might be one of the issues for Caribbean people coming.
Yes.
We're not coming with a baggage.
No. No.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because some friends of mine were having this very conversation this morning, actually, of perhaps the difference if you're coming from a predominantly Black country where you're used to seeing Black excellence, as it were, and Black achievement, and having that confidence instilling in you that you can achieve and do whatever you want, versus, and then going to, say, the United States or United Kingdom or somewhere else where, you know, all of a sudden those faces aren't running the companies. Those faces aren't the senior lecturers. Those faces aren't the prime minister or the president or what have you. And it must be a very different experience for us, as opposed to, say, Black Americans who have lived through, you know, as Taz said, I guess, you know, that experience of having that knee on your neck for generations and generations and generations. And then, but even for us as well, I mean, Taj, I know you deal with a charity of bringing people over to the US, but that, even the shock of that when you first arrive in the United States, of having to go through those feelings of emotions that A, you're no longer the majority, and B, someone is telling you can't. And not just telling you, they're making you feel as if you can't.
Because, Andre, I think that's kind of why sometimes Caribbean people take a little while longer to jump on the bandwagon of what Black Americans have been talking about, because they have a slightly different experience.
Yes.
We're coming from a slightly different place. It may take us a little while longer to catch what's really going on. Because you're not coming thinking racism. You have to deal with it. You have to deal with classism, something along them lines in your little life.
Yes.
So it takes us a little while. But it's sad now, I think, in 2020, where everything is global, to hear Caribbean people talking the same nonsense. Standing up for Floyd and Botham Jean. Sorry, Andrew, the brother's name is Botham Jean.
John. I've heard this last name.
Yeah, you said John because you say it like the English. But we say it like the French.
I've been here too long.
No, was fought over 14 times between the British and the French.
I know.
So the French patois, that's why we say Jean. But you were
I was actually boy there.
I'll take the correction.
Listen, sorry, go on, Claudette. I'll done after it.
No, but I was saying, sorry, Claudette. I was saying it's silly in 2020 for Caribbean people to be saying the same thing, because there's injustice everywhere is the same.
Yes.
We have Caribbean people who live here, and so the connection is there. We have Caribbean students who are coming up. We have people coming on for visits. So as you know it, when is that? What's it? Sneeze in America? You know what it is here? Full-blown fever.
Yeah.
So it affects all of us. So it's not an American issue.
And what changes it what changes it a lot, you know, for me, for sure, is having sons born here in America.
You hold that point a minute, Karen, because
we're going to come to that.
We want to talk. Let me go to Claudette, and then I'll tell you a story.
Okay.
And then we go to another topic. Go on, Claudette. Sorry.
This is kind of based off of what Tosh was saying about understanding racism. One of the things that I had to do in this job was take a racial equity class, and basically it was one of the best 2 days that I had, and very exhausting. Basically, it kind of explained to you why the whole history of racism and what it is and what it stemmed from. And so one of the things they said that genetic study, as we well know conclusively, that all humans are the same. We are 99.9% the same. So as far as like race is just really a construct, basically, that is important, you know, socially and politically and culturally. But the notion of race itself was constructed when the white people came over, the Europeans who came over in the early 1600s to America, and they wanted to decide about the power and access, decide like who would have the power of wealth, who would have access to land. So what they did in the colony of Virginia, they I wrote down some notes so I can remember exactly. So
nice.
So basically, in the they did. The House of Burgesses debated what is a white man in the late 1600s. And this social construct became the foundation for the expansion of colonization in the land that we know as the United States. So basically, some Europeans got together and decided we're going to be better than everyone else. And that's why things have been in place for so long.
Yeah, they created a social construct to support that.
Just to justify how they behave afterwards, which is slavery, how it can help them. So because it kind of goes against what God is saying, love everybody. So, but if I'm more superior person than you, then I must, I don't have to love you.
Right.
If you're not even a person, you know what I mean? You're just a product. You're just a, you're just a, just a piece of property. You know what I mean? So it's really that whole idea about racism, that experiment that they did, it took hold. It's really hurting us. So
and that was fully shown in George Floyd's death. He was not considered a human being. You would never treat a human being that way.
No,
he was not seen as a human being, even in this age. It is sickening. It is sickening.
Yeah.
So we've got a question on screen from one of our guests who is asking, and it might be something you might want to reference, Claudette. Do you also view racist behavior as being related to inferiority complex, particularly on the side of the racist person? Interesting question.
Yeah, it is an interesting question. I want to say yes, but then my other part of me knows that the racist behavior and racism is just a learned experience.
Yes.
It's just a learned experience.
Yeah.
And so it's not necessarily coming from them feeling inferior. It's just coming from, this is what I grew up on.
Yeah.
This is what I know. It's generations of this. And then I see it every day. It's been reinforced every day through the TV, through the news, through everything. So I don't believe it is. I don't believe it's inferiority. Some people, yes.
Okay.
But for the most part, as far as the whole system is concerned, it is just a learned behavior.
Okay.
It depends on the context as well.
Whatever we learn, we can unlearn.
Oh, definitely. But some are definitely threatened, especially by Black men, for sure.
I was going to say it depends on the context. So
and the context.
If you do go into a crowd of Black men or youth and so on, I could imagine people would have fear in that context and use stereotypes to judge that setting. So it probably does depend on the context. I don't know if inferiority is complex as the term I'd use. I'd probably use an intrinsic fear or an innate fear that people might have. And stereotypes are sort of a human condition. We have to generalize to survive. But when it becomes a generalization that starts to belittle people and dehumanize people, that's when it crosses the line into racism.
It's completely irrational. Because growing in a group of people or a group of just Black men and you just saying, they're going to hurt me and I have to do something in order for them not to hurt me is irrational. I don't like you because you're Black. What? That makes no sense. I don't like you because of the color of your skin. I don't know you. We have no interactions. You just look at me and you automatically don't like me. That's irrational.
So that's a question, Claudette, because you said you worked in media. Do you think the media has a role to play in reinforcing stereotypes?
Every time, yes. Yeah, I mean, It was built on that. I mean, you know how many times where they will have a person who committed a crime, and it'll be a white person committed a crime, and they'll show pictures of him happily with his family. But then the same person, the same crime, but a black person, and they'll show him, get his arrest, him looking mean, or him looking like when he got arrested or whatever. It's always something negative. They're getting better at it because people have been pointing it out all the time. Yeah. Even when it's if it's a victim, a black victim, and a white perpetrator, they will always make the white perpetrator look very nice, like he would never hurt a fly. And the person, they're always trying to find something in their past to try and hurt them. So without a doubt, media is also run, media is a business. It's also run by a certain set of people. So, it is what it is. But they're making a conscious effort.
I was going to come to this question afterwards, but I thought, you know what, let's put it up now, because it's an interesting one about how can we improve ourselves when we tackle our own racism and colorism in our own communities. I was going to come to this a little further down the line, but I thought it would be worth just getting a point from you about us as people. How can we improve ourselves when we tackle our own racism, colorism?
Interesting question, because we just said that we don't have racism in the Caribbean, or we don't experience it in the Caribbean, but maybe we do have it. It manifests itself differently.
We have it, growing up.
Well, we don't have racism. I wouldn't say racism.
Going to school, I went to Foundation High School, and we had the black students and the white students. We would be in class together for the entire class, and then lunchtime, all the white students, would assemble together, and black students, you had one of, a few of them would come and integrate, but in general, it was totally separate. And you kind of knew, we've known that most of the businesses were run by whites and whatever. You wouldn't see them in the general population on an everyday basis, but who control things, but it didn't bother you in the same way, because we were the majority. We saw ourselves a lot more.
So this is why I always tell people we are a population majority, but we're not a wealth majority.
That's it.
In Barbados and the Caribbean.
And we were aware.
Which is
I was aware of that. My grandfather used to say this in a different context, but he used to say, "Know your place." Yeah. And I think we grew up knowing our place, but knowing that we can also achieve, beyond what we were accustomed
within
to.
that space.
Yeah. I'm curious to know the age of the person who asked that question.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe she'll drop it into the comments.
Why is that? Why do you think?
Why is that, Tash?
Because I think Caribbean people have a different. Listen, when I was growing up in the Caribbean, and you all know that, if you all grew up in the Caribbean, if a man was black, we called him Blackie, and he had no problem with the name. No, but it's true.
No, listen, I'm red, man. I'm red. All right, I know what you're saying, brother.
I was gonna break that up, but I'm glad.
The man even have a red background too,
Red man in the red room. What's wrong with
you? No, but I'm saying,
go ahead.
We didn't carry that kind of vibration with us.
No.
Everybody called it. Well, my experience might be slightly different. Most of the people who I know who own stores in St. Lucia are black.
Yeah.
So my experience is completely different. But the person asked this question about us, and we didn't really have this thing. What we had was classism based on dollars.
Yeah.
That's how I knew it. The darkest man had the most money. He was the top man. That is how I knew it. So that's why I'm saying the person who asked this question may be a younger person, because
23 years old.
She's 23 years old.
Yeah, well, you see what I mean? Is a younger person must bring this in, because we didn't have them experiences at night.
I think that dynamic has changed in Solution. Really?
I think it has changed, man. I think it has changed.
So two things.
Because you have to remember, like Andrew said, America exports its culture really well. It exports the bad as well as the good. It shows us things that we never used to think about before.
Yeah.
It gives us things. right now, I mean, when we came out of slavery, the white people gave us favors were done based on gradations of skin color. And we carried this with us for a while.
Oh, yeah.
But we got to a point where as young people, it never mattered to us.
Well, and I'd say we had that experience in Barbados where it mattered. The lighter complexion would always
I agree.
be the one I had.
In Jamaica, we definitely have colorism.
Oh, yeah.
The bleaching of the skin, this whole thing about I want to be lighter and brighter.
Oh, yeah.
You're more good looking.
Oh, yeah.
That definitely happens.
No, but Claudette, I'm not saying it did not exist at all, but the ratio to which it existed, it wasn't all that great.
No,
I'm just saying that it definitely happened in Jamaica, and it's still kind of happening today.
Oh yeah,
but not as much. But it's definitely there. I mean, I mean, I've never had that experience in my family. I mean, my great grandfather was very. He was practically white. He was light skinned with blue eyes. You know what I mean? And that's just my great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? So our family has been very mix up. So it's not, and with Jamaica's thing out of many one people. So, we've been having a mixture for a very long time.
Let's bring this back a second, because we just did something that I, how should I word it? So I think sometimes whenever we are having this discussion of race and racism and how we are treated by others, we always find a way to turn it back to ourselves.
Yes.
And that's not to say that that's a bad discussion to have. I'm not saying that it's not an issue that we need to talk to internally. But I always think, and sometimes that's what others want us to do. Because then the uncomfortable conversations don't have to be had. Because all of a sudden, we're talking about ourselves now.
Yes.
But
and all of a sudden, we're the problem, or we have a problem.
But the racism does the how we view ourselves, how we see ourselves, has a lot to do with how racism has affected us. So
I completely agree with that.
Kind of is along the same lines, but I do get your point, Dre.
I completely agree with that. Exactly my only point there is that. And then when we segue there, now we can probably go down for another 2 hours talking about
forgetting real
solve that.
Agree.
So listen, let me take us back even further for a moment, because it is George Floyd that has really brought us into this place and this moment, right? Yeah. And I don't know how you guys are feeling about where we are and particularly what's going on across the world as a result of this death. And you guys live in America, you would have seen this consistently throughout your whole lifetimes of being there. Yeah. But there's something about this particular moment that feels as though we have got to really stand up and take responsibility personally for what we are individually going to do in trying to affect change. Taj, let me ask you a question, because I know that you've been quite active and being out there and being very intentional in being out there. What are you seeing in this moment?
Well, I'm seeing the future and the past. The future of my children, and I've taken enough already in the past, so I have to be there in the present for them. I can't listen. I've marched about 4 times already. I've written 1 million songs about this already. And if I could sing one refrain 1 million times to change the situation, I would. But it doesn't do. Song does not do enough.
No.
Yeah. So it has to be boots on the ground. I cannot ask of people to do for me what I need to do for myself.
Yeah.
On behalf of my children, I need to be there. And we're doing this in the middle of a pandemic. So if I have to choose one, I choose COVID over racism.
Wow.
So I have to be there for my children.
Wow.
Yeah. I agree, because I think I was saying in the opening as well, that's probably one of the biggest convictions for me during this time, is that even though you know that you're standing on the shoulders of people who went before you and people who march on your behalf, again, even before we were in existence, there were people marching not just for themselves but for future generations. I think sometimes we can take for granted when we are running don't want to say our own race, but when we're pursuing our own pursuits, let's put it that way, and we can get caught up, we can forget the journey that went before us, and that's something that I've been convicted really heavily about, during this season. I say to the guys, there's a little phrase I coined called, middle class enlightenment, in that sometimes you get to a point where you've reached whatever success is for you, and then all of a sudden you think, well, I've made it. This is no longer an issue for me to get involved in. And for whatever reason, we're now enlightened that, hey, we've overcome this thing called racism. And no, we haven't. No. And I know. And that's why I went to the march as well. My daughter went with me. Yeah. I'm really convicted to get involved and to add my voice this time around. So I completely hear what you're saying there, Taj.
I was going to say, I felt the same, because I was quite deliberate to ignore that topic. At work, I ensure that I'm not involved in any conversations around diversity, around racism. That's not what I'm paid for, right? So I focus on what are my skills. I'm an engineer, I'm a songwriter as well, Taj. I write books. That's the stuff that I'm going to spend my time doing. Yeah. But if suddenly now I have to write music and write songs about oppression and slavery and racism, and then I have to spend hours at work educating people about diversity and inclusion, when am I gonna do my actual work? But something like this does send a lightning bolt through you almost to tell you there's still an issue at hand that we have a responsibility to take charge of, right? And even though we are probably not going to achieve something massive, we're not going to achieve something large, there's an incremental shift, and we have an opportunity now, maybe just for the next 2 weeks, because this is going to disappear. This is going to disappear.
But that's the thing. We can't
let it's not going to disappear. We can't let
it disappear.
Out of the news.
The news cycle.
So we have this opportunity now to speak up, to get involved. It's as though the system is a little bit exposed. We have this time to jump in, unpick it, and then hopefully we can
hopefully build it back. It needs deconstruction.
But for our next generation coming.
We're not going to see it.
We're not going to see it.
If this goes away and comes back again, it will be
worse.
Terrible.
Be much worse.
Because the man them were kneeling down, and then people were upset. Marching and they're upset. The next time, will be dread.
I think there's going to be change. I think there's going to be some tangible.
It can't keep going on, because sometime something is going to explode.
There's going to be tangible change, but we can't let up. We have to insist on change.
I completely agree. What makes this different for me is the simple fact that the protests went to all 50 states. Not only did it go to all 50 states, it went across the globe. And I never saw that before. We protested a little bit here and there, but all 50 states plus countries that don't even have to, don't even really mess with us too tough. It's like amazing. The other thing that's important is that we do the protest first, and then the next thing is definitely the economic part of it, where we start to, as Black people of all different backgrounds, coalesce and decide that we're going to support Black-owned businesses.
We have to.
Certain things, just to put a dent in the economy, because we definitely spend a lot. We spend trillions of dollars in this country. Trillions. We do. That's a lot of money to hold back. You know what I mean? Certain things you definitely, certain things you kind of have to, some of the things you're going to have to kind of acquiesce to, like, maybe, where you shop and stuff, because most grocery stores are not owned by, Black people. But there are so many other things that we can buy that you can just support Black businesses. And then after that, obviously, is legislation and voting and getting into, your local, voting out the people and getting your local people, the right local people to help you on the ground. You know what I mean? I believe that this is definitely something different. I thought it was unexpected. I mean, I knew it was bad, but when I just really started seeing how how it was so many other people involved, white people and Spanish people and just everyone, all different cultures, all different backgrounds being involved in this. And in some states, majority white people.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me because that's the problem that we have with racism, because racism is really not a black person's problem. It's a white person's problem.
Yeah.
It is a problem. We wreak the bad part about it, where the essence of why it's going on, but they have to recognize that it's that behavior is the problem, and you have to fix that in you, because we can say it all the time. Racism, this is bad. And until they actually recognize it and take it upon themselves and say, okay, we have to change what we're doing as a people.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because here in the UK, in I think, was it Bristol? Is it today? Where they had some serious marches, and from what I saw on television, it was a predominantly white crowd. And they actually pulled down one of the statues that was there in the town center of a guy called Edward Colston, who was actually pretty big in the slave trade. They pulled it down and threw it in the river.
Wow.
Rolled it down the street.
I thought it was fascinating.
Now, there are two things there that's interesting. Because if it were us who did that, you know, and this comes back to the conversation, I think you're alluding to it there, Claudette, where it's almost the privilege that white people have. They need to use it in this instance here to help with this problem. Because I can guarantee you, if that were 10,000 black people who pulled that statue down, the outcome could have potentially been very different.
Of course.
And I think that many of them are willing to do that. They're showing you they're willing to take down those statues and to, you know.
If I can come in here, because if I can just come in here, because just going back to Andre's point about middle class enlightenment, particularly as it relates to black people, right? Part and I think it was a conversation you and I were having this week, Andre, when you were saying too often those of us who have done well in the black community, who've gone to university, got ourselves educated, gone on and done well, we kind of go into the background, right? We leave the organization of things to the people who are not as qualified to do them, whilst we sit on the sidelines and criticize. And I think one of the legacies that has to positively come out of this season is those of us who can actively contribute more, who have been engaged during this season. We got to continue. We've got to absolutely carry on, because there cannot be a reversal. I think the change is not going to be effective if there's a reversal.
They cannot.
I would add to that, though, Mark.
Out at this point.
Add to what you said, Mark, because we have to be careful that we don't take control of something we don't completely understand. Because I can tell you for a fact, people who are not in that middle class enlightenment have a bigger experience of racism than those who are, right? So there's this phrase of we have to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to act as well. And there's a lot of listening that has to happen there within our community, but also across communities as well.
Absolutely. And the other point I was going to raise was the whole point about white silence that we were starting to kind of unpick a little bit, but didn't really delve into it too deeply. I think that has been one of the fascinating things in this whole protest and this whole response to George's death, where we those people who have been silent. And I think the thing that really pricked me with this, again, I go back to my 16-year-old son, because a lot of the conversation that they're having is about this. It's about who's quiet, who has a platform to use, but they are not using it.
That's
it. That has become a real issue for a lot of young people in the black community, because they're looking at these people who, a celebrity or whatever they are, and they're saying, but why aren't you speaking? Why aren't you saying something?
They're speaking volumes right now. I'm telling you, their silence is speaking volumes right now.
The social media conversation around this and what the young people are having is really critical. Because you're right there, Mark. The young people are looking at people they follow, they quote unquote influencers, the stars they buy tickets to go to their concert. And I'm seeing they're really beginning to ask them some pointed questions why are you not getting involved in this?
Yes.
You know, you're happy to take our culture, you're happy to take our money, you're happy for us to follow you, but now something that affects me, you know, it doesn't seem as if you want to get involved. You want to stay on the sidelines. You want to say, you know what, I'd rather not upset these other people, but that one I can turn a blind eye to. And I think that's actually becoming unacceptable to the young people. And I think even at the conversation we were having earlier, before, or a little bit earlier in this segment, where we were talking about things that we put up with, and we kind of laugh it off. You know, there's so much that we have put up with, but what I'm looking at from our kids, they're not willing to put up with it.
They're not.
Yeah.
And they're asking us, like, how did you put up with that?
I don't know if you saw my my Facebook post yesterday, but basically it was asking the same thing about the reggae community.
Yes, I did. I saw it.
And
the conscious reggae artists.
I saw that.
You know, because we speak righteousness every day. And this is injustice, man. This is something that I figured everybody would have something to say about. But going back to a point you made about changing laws and where we move on from here, these things are easy, you know. If all white people in America wanted this changed, it would be changed. Yes, I have marched and with mostly white folks than black folk, because for one, we're less in the population. So if we did it proportionately, we would still be less in the crowd. But there have been more white people everywhere I've gone. But there have been more of them at home. And they've been
that's the problem. They don't want change.
So
they're
if all
comfortable.
of people who are at home on a silent decide this has to change tomorrow, it will change. So they don't want it to change. Yes, some people with us, and yes, we appreciate these soldiers who walk with us in the pandemic and talk about our rights. But most people home are silent. These are the ones we have to be more afraid of.
That's it.
Judge, that's really interesting, because I said I started to get a little bit more involved in conversations online, speaking to people other than black people actually about this issue. One of them, so a friend of mine, a pastor in the USA, a white pastor, he put a post up that really impacted me, and then the comments impacted me too, actually, and I kind of jumped in the conversation, where he said, you know, he knew it was bad, but he didn't realize how bad it was until he started to stand up during this. And what his parishioners and people in his pews were telling him. Now, I saw one comment there of a lady who's then said, you know, I stand with you, Pastor, so-and-so. You know, I've learned to just keep scrolling now. And then she put an emoji with a zipper across her mouth. And when I saw that, I went, I need to talk to this lady. And I said to her, you know, I know you see what's happening, but I hope you find it within you to unzip your mouth. Because until people like you unzip your mouth, nothing is going to happen. And she came back and she said, you know, my heart is broken. I went back and I said, we need broken hearts and open mouths. You know, because that is what we need.
We do.
We need the Facebook warriors. Yes. We need the guys on Twitter and, you know, Instagram and stuff. Yes. But we need people who have that privilege to say, no, we do not accept it. Not mentally don't accept it, but you need to voice that you don't accept it. Otherwise, your silence is just as good as the violence.
They're very uncomfortable discussing it. It is a
but there's a fear amongst those people to talk as well. You know, and that fear is real also.
But okay, so they have fear, but then we've been going through it. You have the luxury of being silent and sitting on your couch. I don't have the luxury. I just walk out my door and I feel it. You know what I mean? It's crazy. I mean, Jane Elliott did that, you know, with the blue-eyed, brown-eyed experiment that she did years ago. And one of the things she did this, the one in she did this in the school with the little one of. Well, she did in an auditorium. This one was in an auditorium, and she said to all the white people, she said, everyone who wants to be treated like a black person, please stand up. Nobody stood up. And she was like, wait a minute. She's like, maybe you didn't hear me clearly. If you want to be treated like anybody who wants to be treated like a black person in America, please stand up. No one stood up. So she said, so that means that you understand something is going on. Something is wrong.
So you're silent,
what's going on. So why are you sitting there silent if you know you don't want to be treated like a Black person?
That's right.
It doesn't directly affect them until it directly impacts them.
But
it's as though it doesn't exist.
What they're seeing now is, if you notice, like some of the brutality that's happening between law enforcement and the protesters, and what they're doing, where some law enforcement are running over the protesters, are knocking them to the ground.
The guy in Buffalo, 75
killing
years
them.
old.
All of that stuff that's been happening to us just at a traffic stop.
Yeah.
So that should be a ticket.
Can I ask a question?
You know what I mean? So now they kind of see where we're talking about. There is brutality. It is happening. Yeah. It is real, and it is now happening to you. So now you understand.
That's it.
Yeah. So let me ask a quick question, right?
Go ahead, Taj.
Sure.
If there is somebody in America, some white person somewhere, who has no idea what it is to deal with Black people and has no idea about racism, how do we reach that person?
Their heart.
So
in your heart, when something is wrong or right. They don't have to know that the person is Black. They have to know that something is unjust.
But remember,
how come what Bob Marley was preaching about and singing about 30 years ago still hits home to every single country across the world?
I mean, it's the same thing King said. It still resonates now. But the question remains, though. How do you reach the person who lives way out in Montana, who sees no Black people, hardly ever? They see them in a festival, and that's the idea of getting cultured.
So,
how do you reach that person to let them realize? And remember, they've been taught that we're subhumans. How do you get to those people?
So one thing I was thinking of is, have you heard of Helen Keller? I think I shared this on Facebook today. So Helen Keller was the first person to get a Bachelor of Arts from Harvard, or I think a Bachelor of Arts, who was both deaf and blind. And Helen was such a staunch supporter of the NAACP and a contemporary of William Du Bois. She was deaf and blind, so that means she couldn't see the color of skin.
Wow.
She couldn't hear the sound of voices, but still she found it in her heart to understand that there was an issue.
Right.
And that could be related to the fact that she was a campaigner for disability for many years, campaigning for that. So I think if you can connect with people on
injustice,
what are you fighting for? Yeah. Everybody's fighting for something. Everybody has some challenge that they have in life. Everybody has a set of ideas, expectations, and concerns that they face. When you can start to picture it and present it in that way that's relevant, I think that's a term. How do you make things a struggle relevant to everyone, that they can get on board and move with it as well?
So I'm running with your answer because somebody asked me that question. So I'm running with your answer because I think it's cool.
Taj, also, that person in Montana knows the experience. His family and his future generations before him know that experience between Native Americans and them. You know what I mean? They're aware of injustices.
Yeah.
They may not see a Black person, but they definitely seen a Native American person and that injustice that happened with them, because they're most likely chilling on a Native American person's land.
Yeah, I think sorry.
No, go ahead, Karen.
As you said, Claudette, if the economics impact them, if we started, spending our money with us, and it had impact on those people who are not aware and don't know what's going on, then they might start to want to learn and educate themselves. It has to impact them in some way in order for them to say, oh, maybe there's a problem.
So I'll just comment on that, because impact can be negative or positive. So something I try when I've recognized there are these two extreme positions. There are people, whenever there's a racist issue that occurs, they say, well, nothing is going to change. We've been here before, nothing is going to change. They're very cynical. And then on the other extreme, you have people who are just indifferent or oblivious to what's going on. Mm-hmm. And I find with these two different extremes, there are two different conversations you have to have.
Yes.
With people who are cynical, you have to prove that things can change.
Yeah.
And that might mean legislation, that might mean introducing mandatory courses if you're at work, or changing something in the law, or setting up examples, creating quotas, whatever. For the people that are indifferent, I find the conversation with them, and this is generally people who are not affected by racism or injustice as we know it. The conversation with them has to be around benefits.
Right.
What are the benefits if we get rid of racism? Because if we are able to tackle racism, we're able to tackle a big chunk of injustice on a large scale. So you have to really start selling. Here's all the benefits that this brings to society from a creativity perspective, from a productivity perspective.
Economic
perspective. It just changes things from dropping crime down as well. You have to start selling these benefits. And I think we have to create forums for having those different conversations.
I think that's good and perhaps true, but I think it needs to be slightly more radical than that initially in order to get to that point. Yeah. Because you got to understand the entire social construct, and if we keep it on the USA and even other countries across the world, has been built for generation upon generation upon the fact that someone is better than someone.
Yes.
And that this race of people are, and I mean, it's written in the United States laws at the very beginning, Black people were 3/5 of the human. Therefore, when it said, that every man is equal, it actually wasn't talking about us. Actually,
that is very
that's being ingrained throughout the education system, even though they may not say it as blatant as that. That's ingrained across media. And by media, I don't mean the news cycle, because I am a huge proponent that American entertainment culture has probably done more to ingrain in people what position to put Black people in than any news cycle could happen. And stuff. So for me, to these things to really come in, it's going to be a lot more than just showing people the benefits. You're going to get there initially at some point.
At some
point.
But
what we need now is a real serious deconstruction of the structures and the pillars that are actually underpinning this thing. Now, how do we get there? Taj, that's a hard one. It's a combination of agitation, is a combination of constant pressure, is a combination of a re-education of ourselves, of our worth, and then of other people as well. So it's gonna be a lot.
I'll come back there to you there, not to make this Philip and Andre argument.
Hold on
there, Phil. Go, Jack.
I want Mark to answer the question, because the reason why the question was asked, I know there are different sets of people listening to this.
Yeah.
Listening to our Black people, listening to our radicals. So I wanted them to have different perspectives of what it is and how we can move forward.
Yeah. Well, I always agree with both perspectives that both Phil and Andre have mentioned, but I perhaps think the one area that we as Black people will have to focus heavily on is education. Okay? Education has to play a fundamental role. Let me give you an example. I grew up in Barbados. We used to have a program on our television called The Dukes of Hazzard. Right? Two white boys who used to drive around a car called General Lee with a Confederate flag on the top. Why was that showing on my TV in Barbados?
Exactly.
Do you understand what I'm saying? So I'm growing up in a place consuming a culture that actually has been quite damaging to where our people have come from. But here we are ingesting it. We can't properly move forward until the decision makers within our community recognize the value of having education as part of being disruptive, but also selling the benefits. So I think it's a equal argument, but we have to value education within how we're going to unpick it and put it back together.
Education of the wider world, because I think that is such a good example. I think we talked about that sometimes before as well. Seeing young Black boys in the Caribbean walking around with a General Lee car as a toy. And that kind of stuff, with no understanding or idea
what it symbolizes
of what the flag represented. Beyond that, forget children, people in authority, buying our television the division station, contributing to that economy by buying it, showing me that on my TV screens as a young black boy in the Caribbean. We got a long way to go towards understanding. And Mark's right, because we talk about it in some previous shows. Education is so key, but not just focus on the Caribbean journey of Arawaks and Caribs and Creoles and black people and African and stuff. Go wider, because now we're consuming so much from outside the region. We got to know what it is we're consuming. We understand how that is shaping our view of ourselves and whether or not we're placing value on ourselves. Because I think we allow certain things to come in because A, we don't know the history, and B, we don't necessarily value ourselves as much as we should.
I agree with that. That's definitely true. Claudette, when you said that the guy told you to go back to Africa, I think there is a season for us to actually go back to Africa, but go way back. Something I always said is, in terms of black history for my children, we're not going to start with slavery, because that's not where the black experience.
That's not where it starts.
So let me just tell you,
that's what's being sold.
I had the opportunity to take my family. We went to Africa. We went
Where
to East Africa, Tanzania.
Hang on, where's Stas going?
Taking us on a journey.
The battery was dying.
I was saying it's a massive house because he'd be going for like 5 minutes and I didn't see it.
Sorry, Karen, carry on.
I had the opportunity, we went to Africa, we went to Tanzania in 2018. And my 18-year-old son he said, Mom, thank you. Thank you for exposing me to Africa, to know that what we've learned is so different from the real Africa. That it was an amazing place and an amazing experience. And I'm so glad I had the opportunity to take my kids. Yeah, we all need to go to Africa and visit Africa at some point.
I was so happy that in my father's lifetime, I mean, he's still alive, thank God, but he got a chance to go to South Africa and Ghana. He just got back from Ghana last year. And for him, the first time he went to South Africa, he said that when he touched down in Africa, he literally just started crying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just cried because, my father has always talked about Africa and how fantastic it was and how we are from kings and queens. Our education and our how we knew about astronomy and science and mathematics and everything. So for him, it was such a great experience for him. And I'm so happy that he's got a chance to go back. And the thing is, I so agree with you, Mark, about education. The thing is that and Andre, we're in such a good time right now as far as access to education. This laptop, your cell phone, these are just straight access to information and educating yourself. I was just watching a thing on James Baldwin. He did a speech in 1965, I believe, in the UK, talking about the black man and why things were the way they were, and he broke it down for, I think it was like in the House of Commons, I believe. It's named James Baldwin Black Lives Matter, and in quotes, Black Lives Matter speech. And I shared it on my Facebook page, on my Facebook timeline. It was such an amazing thing to hear him talk about it and break it down. And this is back in 1965. And here we are in 2020 still writing about the same thing that he was talking about in 1965. You know what I mean? So education is the key. Start reading up on James Baldwin. Start reading up on Angela Davis. All of those, Black Panther, even the stories that they were talking about Black Panther, it's nothing like what you thought they were. You know what I mean? We are a great people, and to understand that our foundation is of greatness and of goodness and of creativity and color and vibrancy. You know what I mean? We were so taught that we were just here for slavery, we were here for products, and we were here to build this thing. And it's like, no.
We were a commodity.
Yeah. We were travelers, we were traders, we did so many amazing things. We were the reason why we have an AC A black guy. I love that guy.
I just need to add one more thing with regards to my trip, that the Africans were so welcoming.
Yes.
And especially when we went to hotels, and they were so happy to see Black people because they said they hardly ever come.
Yeah.
You know, so they are so welcoming, and they're like, you know, bring people, let them experience this, because, you know, the way that Africa is depicted is so wrong. It is so very wrong.
And it's a small section. I mean, it's a whole continent of amazing things. I mean, I was so happy that Ghana had their comeback, their cultural revolution that they had last year. And so many people came back to actually see, you know, a lot of people, you look like the people.
Oh, yeah.
You look just like them. You know what I mean? It could be in your family.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just amazing. But yeah, education is the key.
So listen, we touched on this earlier, and this is one thing that I would really like to discuss with you. You will see that I've got 2 boys on the wall behind me. And, you know, for me, and I'm sure for many parents who are going through this particular struggle, this is where the challenge is now. How do we, first of all, ourselves become courageous and recognize our role that we have not played as effectively as we should have done previously, but also how do we firmly get them to start recognizing who they are and what they themselves can go on to achieve. And I know you started to talk about your sons earlier, Claudette. I wonder if you, sorry, not Claudette, my apologies, my absolute apologies there. You didn't say anything about your sons, Claudette, I meant Karen.
Well,
Karen, and then Taj, and I'm sure you will have some input on this as well, Claudette. So Karen, the children, what are you saying to them? What are you saying to them?
Well, my children, thank God, have been a little sheltered from the experiences. You know, they've not come home to tell me of any experience they had where they felt they were targeted because they were Black. So, and I brought them up with that self-confidence that they can achieve anything. You know, I raised them a little differently. So one son was very integrated, going to a really mixed school, and he has, you know, a whole, you know, an array of different group of friends. The other son, I had to keep a little more sheltered because he's a little extra. So he was in private schools with mostly Blacks. He's the one I kind of, you know, because of the exposure, I kind of fear for him a little more.
Right.
You know, I fear for him a little more, and I always have to be telling him, you know, because he wants to go with the culture, you know, he wants to wear his pants a certain way and, you know, carry himself a certain way. And I'm like, you know, I want him to be comfortable with who he is, but also know he has to present a little differently at times, you know, because that's my fear for him, you know, because of the current climate that we're in. But I'm very hopeful based on what I'm seeing that things are changing. You know, and for their future, I think they're gonna be able to experience things a little differently. I'm hopeful, very hopeful that there'll be a change, a tangible change with the you know, the racist culture. That I know it's not going away anytime soon. You know, it is ingrained. It has been taught. It has to be unlearned. Wow. But I believe that you know, I am. You know, I'm a Christian. I'm born again, and I believe that they're covered. And I'm not going to be ignorant and say they can go do anything, but I believe that they'll have a prosperous future. They'll be good. Yeah.
Okay. Let me hear you, Taj. A Black man traveling across America with you've got some. Is it 3 boys? Did I hear that correctly?
I have 3 boys.
3 boys. Wow.
And unlike Karen, I am not a Christian, so I don't know if my boys are covered. I'm telling you the scenario. So I have 3 boys, and the 2 older boys, when we were in high school, the pants down on your bottom was a style. So my wife at that time was the designer for Liz Claiborne, and she would bring home tons of belts. So there were lots of belts in the house. I knew there were belts. The kids would leave with the pants belted and go to school. And, you know, being a musician, having time off, I would come around and watch my kids coming from school, and I saw the pants down So I'm a Caribbean man, please.
Yes.
So I said, yo, listen, the plans are down business not working for me.
Good.
I said it once, I said it twice. The third time, they leave the house, they well, everything. So when they come home, I go up to their rooms. I said, bring me the jeans you have.
Oh dear.
You can see where this going.
I took a scissor and I cut the bottom out.
Wow.
And they say, why? I say, you don't need that part. You know? You don't need that part.
Wow.
Put their jeans. I could tell you guys I have no more problems with my kids in the pants down.
Wow.
Well done.
Because that's how Caribbean people taught us how to do.
Yes. Yeah.
You know? And I know my kids are living in America and think they're wonderful children. I brought them up like a Caribbean man because I say, this is broken, don't fix it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? But I'll tell you one more incident, I'll get back to my experience. One time, my last son got a little out of order and slammed his door.
Wow.
I went downstairs in the basement, I took my electric drill and I took the door off the hinge. And I put it next to the door. And I said, well, when you can put that door up on yourself, put it back on. Door's not banging. But we're not playing this thing. And I say this to say, these kids' behavior is learned. You see something like this. You went to somebody's house and that's how they were acting. The kids were acting with their parents and talking to them in particular. We're not accepting this.
That's where my kids spent every summer from the time they were 2 years old to 12 years old, 10 years, every summer they spent in Barbados.
Yeah, but my kids spent all them summers in St. Lucia, but
still slamming the door.
No, they know better. They knew better. No,
I have grown boys who are to get to a particular time in their life. The nature of things, they feel the need to challenge. But you have to bring them up in such a way that they know where it ends. I have wonderful boys. Why I'm on the front line for them.
And a Christian,
absolutely necessary. So let me do this. 2 days ago, we're sitting, lying on the bed. Picture this. We're watching the news. My son comes in. My wife and I watching news. He said he has to go somewhere, and my wife said to him, "Jonah, you know what to do, right?" "Mom, I got it already." "Jones," and if they say speak to you, if they pull you over, and he just keeps saying, "Mom, I know what to do." "Jones, please get on the phone." And he goes, "Mom, if I get on my phone, they'll think it's a gun and they'll shoot me." Why do we have to have conversations with our children?
Yes.
Why do I have to have this conversation with my son?
That's the hard part.
Having these conversations with their children.
No.
And that is the point we're trying to drive home. For those of you who don't understand, if you don't have to have these conversations with your children, you are privileged.
Very privileged.
So that is why, big man, we all have to get on these lines. Because this has to change. I don't need to have these conversations anymore. I don't want to have them.
No, I agree.
No, and I think we as Black fathers have got a specific responsibility. You know, my oldest is 16, and it's now starting to hit me. You know, it has always been a challenge, but as they grow up through the years and they start to form their own personalities, get influenced by outside factors, you then realize, wow, you know what? The scale of what is involved here is going to be so significant. You have to stay visible. But it is now starting to dawn on some of us as well that we have also got to shift how we have perhaps thought about the Black community and the role that we need to play, and in helping them to recognize that we're going through this struggle, but we're going through this struggle so that you further down the line don't have to experience the things that we have had to go through. Listen, let me tell you a story. And Philip and Andre probably don't know this story, so it will be new to them. A lady asked me this week, "Mark, have you ever experienced racism?" And it really struck me, right? And she asked me out of a genuine, it was a genuine question, someone that I've got a lot of respect for. And I was sitting and thinking, but what have I experienced?
Mm-hmm.
And you know where I went back to? I was born in a tenantry in Barbados, right? And I spent much of my young formative life on Mr. Chandler's plantation. Now, anybody that live in Todd's in St. John would know Mr. Chandler's plantation because Mr. Chandler was the employer in Todd's. I used to spend my younger days sitting under the trailers helping my grandmother to load cane on Mr. Chandler's plantation. Now, the effect of that meant that I missed a lot of my education when I was younger. So what that has then meant in terms of a legacy for me as a Black person is I have lived out a life that was heavily shaped by the economic circumstances, the oppression that existed when I was born in the 70s.
And the perceived place of Black
all
people.
my life. And sometimes we don't fully appreciate that. The story that was in play when we were younger and even today is quite significant. So when she asked me that, it took me completely back to, well, I've been living this all my life.
Wow.
But I now want to be able to pass something on to my kids that is different.
Yeah.
Because that is, somebody has got to affect the change in a generation.
Yeah.
And that is where I think we need to be now. We are the ones that have got to try and affect this change to our sons and daughters.
Yeah.
Claudette, I'm sure you are a guardian. What do you see?
Well, I don't have any kids myself, but I definitely have a lot of cousins and kids that are in my life. And what I try to do is just be help them be more critical thinkers, help them and help them find where they can make their mark in a way that is good for them, but also to teach others. Like my whole thing is like, especially now working in law enforcement, I'm all about knowing your rights. You need to know your rights.
Yes.
You need to know how to conduct yourself in this particular situation, how to interact in this particular situation. When you're inside of a store, when you're encountering law enforcement. One of the things that I felt was very, very helpful, and I give it to any young man or any young woman that I come encounter with, the ACLU.com has a section called Know Your Rights. That's exactly what it's called. And what it does is breaks down different scenarios that you have with law enforcement and what you should respond to. What is your basic right within the state that you live in? So they have broken it down to different states. So you tell them, what state you live in, and they will cater it to you. And it's amazing that even when I read over, I was like, oh, really? Like, oh, this is such a good tool to have, because once you know what your rights are, it's harder for people to trample on them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you know that this is not how the law goes, and I can tell you X, Y, Z, and it shows you how to even respond. What happens when a police officer says this? You say that. If he says this, you say that. You know what I mean? So it's an amazing thing. ACLU.com. The rights.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. It's a wonderful website. I would share it to myself. But I'll tell you this: when these brothers are coming for you, you can have a jacket and tie, you can have a skirt.
I agree with you. I'm not saying.
I'm not saying you're not saying that. I'm agreeing with you, and I said I will pass it on to my kids, which is a wonderful resource. But the thing about it is, when these brothers come, it doesn't matter what, George could have known the entire Bible upside down.
Yeah, it didn't make a difference.
When they decided to take you out, it doesn't matter what you see. I mean, the brother from St. Lucia, both of them, Jean, was in his apartment.
The culture needs to change. That racist culture.
I mean, he could have had this thing set up on his wall, they would have taken him out.
Yeah. The fundamental change definitely comes from the law enforcement end of it. They have to train differently, have to respond differently, be more in community policing. That's my job. That's what my job. Yeah, that's my job now. I'm in the neighborhood support team, which is the community policing department of the Broward Sheriff's Office. So I agree with you that there are certain things that you could know everything, and your situation will be your situation, depending on who you're having an encounter with. But also, it doesn't ever hurt to know that your rights. Know your rights and know how far this can go. So, and you just never know. It's something you might say may switch the whole thing around. But the law enforcement side of it, we're the training has to be different.
Phil, go ahead, jump in. You wanted to jump in there, and then I'll.
Yeah, I just want to jump in on that because I think that's very significant, knowing your rights. Because I think it's that we need to be very clear about what are the things that we want to see change in the system, in the government, and so on. But we have to take control of the things that we can do for ourselves.
Right.
And knowing your rights is one of them. The other thing that I'm really a champion for is to watch what we create, and even the conversations we have with our kids. Yes, we have to have those conversations about oppression and how to carry yourself and so on, but it can't end there.
Yeah.
We need to change the stories we tell. We need to, if you look at a lot of kids' books and literature that we have, a lot of our literature is a historical narrative. We don't have sufficient literature out there that's funny, right? That's just in comparison to what the mainstream publishers would have out there. Or television shows as well. We just need to expand that, and also on beauty as well. You know, reminding it might seem like a superficial thing, but we don't value ourselves sufficiently enough to be the reference or the model of what is beautiful.
I know where you're going with this. I know where you're going with this here, you know.
Yeah. So
let me just say one thing to that, because I get on my son, my youngest son, as I said, he's a little extra, so he wears his hair natural. His hair is, if he combs it out, is a big, huge afro. Yeah. You know, and initially I was like, you have to cut your hair. You need to do this. You need to be more groomed. And I'm like, why? He's comfortable with who he is. Why am I, just to conform? I'm insisting that he does certain things. And I'm like, no, you do, I want to see you kempt. You look a little kempt, but you know what? If you're comfortable with who you are, that's who you are,
Yeah. Just let me just jump in there for a second. First of all, let me just say, hey, Avril, saw your comment. Thank you. I'm glad you like the platform. We'll be doing lots more of this, but thank you very much for your comment there as well. And I saw some others there as well coming from Floyd. Thank you very much for your comments. And Molly. Sorry, Molly, I saw you there as well. I've seen your comments and you've been pretty active in the chat room. So thank you for that. We really appreciate that. I just wanted to pick up on Philip there because guys, you know me. I talk about entertainment and the way how we don't do it or the way how we do it. And I always bang on about the perception of America or perception of the UK even. It has a lot more to do with what we consume as entertainment than what we consume as a documentary or news. And we in the Caribbean haven't gone past documentary and news as yet in terms of how we present ourselves. And I think if we can get beyond that and present ourselves via entertainment. By entertainment doesn't mean that you're taking that there's no morality to a story. Right. Entertainment doesn't mean that you're not presenting Black women and Black men as beautiful and loving yourself and what's not. But you can entertain and educate at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think we had a conversation earlier about in one of our previous episodes talking about how people perceive the health system in the US and what the health system in the US, how it's been doing over the recent period here with COVID-19 and stuff. But our perception at home is still that it's better. And that's perhaps because we consume about 15 seasons of Grey's Anatomy. Yeah. We just have that perception that it is better because of how they present themselves. So there's a lot to do with that.
You cannot detach the fact that there is a confidence factor around how we shift towards producing things that our people can consume, because oftentimes we don't start from a position of we can do it. We start from a position of convincing ourselves that we can't do it, actually. So therefore, we will talk ourselves out of the idea. While somebody who might be less talented, got less ideas, they'll just get on and do it.
Because
they have the confidence and the privilege to do so. So we can't.
I've been reading today on something.
Also, the support system too.
That's true too.
There's no support. Like, I mean, for a long time, especially in Jamaica, the local television stations weren't supporting creators. It's cheaper to buy 27 seasons of Grey's Anatomy than actually show a local person, you know. And then also they're thinking about ad time. And, you know, my thing is like, why you can't have an hour of your 24-hour day kind of contributed to local programming. You know, so from people who weren't you who were producing it.
Yeah, so I think we done it. We come in full circle on the conversation. Well, hour and a half, nearly 2 hours now. Well, that's flown by. That's completely flown by.
Taj had to recharge his battery.
Yeah, but I think we started analyzing the situation as it is with racism in the United States. And I think we all established that there is a Caribbean story there, and it's just not an American story. I think we look a little bit at understanding our history a little bit better. And you know, I always quote great Jamaican statesman Rex Netherford. I always quote him because he had a quote that says, "You cannot know," and I paraphrase here, but you cannot know your future until you understand your past. Yeah, and you build on that, because sometimes when you know your past, you know that will never happen again. Yes. You know, you hear stories of you know, the slogan coming out of World War II or whatever, lest we forget, or never again, and what's not. And I think when we understand our past, that we can actually start to build that own ethos within our thinking of this will not happen again, one, and two, this is where we're going and what we'll do to ensure that it doesn't. So even as we come to that phrase, then I guess just a 2-word question here: what next?
Yeah.
What next?
Go on, Karen.
What next? What next? I think we have a lot to do. It's a long road ahead. But I think, you know, the synergy, you know, us working together with the white population and everyone that's willing to help, I am very hopeful that we are our kids, my sons are gonna have a different future. They're gonna have a different experience. But we have to make sure that a tangible change comes from this. We have to stay on this, you know, be it economics, you know, education is at the foundation. We all agree on that. We have to keep educating ourselves, our kids. But I think I am a big thing, the economics. I think if we spend our money and show that our monies make a big difference in this economy, that you'll see some changes coming about quicker than, you know, sooner rather than later.
Excellent.
Excellent. Claudette?
Well, definitely a social change needs to emerge as individuals come together and realize, okay, we're not taking this anymore. Those individuals are now making groups. Those groups now become a collective mindset. And that collective mindset needs to have that one goal to translate, that's going to transcend what they want to do and what the change is all about. Like we said, we talked about education on both sides. As far as, you know, when dealing with law enforcement, we have been trying to be proactive in the community before something of a George Floyd happens, a situation like that happens. Because once you have trust in the community before anything wild happens, then you know that you can rely on the community, and community can rely on you to either, one, keep us safe, or two, give us information, make us understand. Can we have a dialogue? Once you try and build that trust within the community, you can go far. That's why you see what happened in Ferguson, some of those law enforcement officers were able to walk amongst the community because they worked to build that trust. So the thing is you have to change racist people or racist mindset, that is something that is deep-seated, that is a social construct that you have to consciously want to come out of. You know what I mean? So the thing is that you will, as an individual, have to want the change before the change will happen. Now, once we've got the change, we can do many things from there. But as long as we keep our voices loud enough, keep on pointing out the injustices, because you can't be silent, and keep loving each other. It sounds corny, but you have to keep loving each other.
True, not corny at all.
Yeah, you know, it's just like I mean, I don't know, you know, I don't know a majority of those people out there, but thank God that they're out there saying that we're not going to do this anymore, because that catalyst of change is the reason why we're not in chains anymore. That catalyst of change is the reason why we are not, that we're able to vote. You know what I mean? There's so many people who are on the front lines who sat at a table so that we could actually go eat at the restaurant that we can't go eat at now because of COVID. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? So
now it's our turn.
Yeah, it's our turn. This is our moment. This is our time. This is 2020. We are in, like I said, we are in some of the best times right now because we have access to communication. We are talking to each other on a global basis right now. That wasn't happening before on your own platform. That wasn't happening before. You know what I mean? So right now we have no excuse.
No.
We have no excuse where we cannot really make it, where we can't make this dent into what we're trying to do right now. What this global wave is happening right now. We have no excuse. Change is gonna come. It's inevitable at this point. I said the toothpaste is out of the tub right now.
You gonna bring it on, Todd?
Well, I hope this is the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yes.
I truly hope, because I feel like James Baldwin says, the fire next time. Yeah. I truly hope this is listen, men go crazy in congregations. They only get better one by one. So we need to continue this conversation.
Yeah.
Then among ourselves and with people from different nationalities.
Yeah.
To sit together and eat together and have this conversation and make sure that we continue it. Like Philip said, we have to let them see that there's a benefit to doing it collectively than doing it individually.
Yeah.
Because we cannot continue to live like this. I mean, we cannot ask people to be patient anymore. It's been 400 years. Like Sharpton said, 401. Here we cannot. This can no longer go on. I can no longer have this conversation with my child.
Yeah.
Wow.
Education, yes, from the educational standpoint, that we as ourselves have to realize our value. We have to stop having these distracted conversations among ourselves about light skin and dark skin and nappy hair. Because you know what, if a woman buy her hair, well, you still see her as a black woman. I don't care which watch she have on her head. We need to get past these conversations. We need to learn to love each other for who we are and what we look like. Us for us. That body is no longer our image of what it is supposed to be, but we know.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Wow. I do not want to have this conversation with my child.
No.
I am sick and tired, and I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired.
That's it.
I'm with you.
Enough is enough.
It's about time we come together as a collective. And you know, they have these little black people I see come on TV with distractions telling us they see the criminal and George Floyd, and we all are criminals because it is a criminal that
Tell me about it.
You know what I mean?
Tell me about it.
You know, I tell people when they told Pizarro to teach the Indians about God, I come for no such reason. I've come to take from them the gold. They've already taken our gold, people. Please. Yeah. You know, we need to stop looking for ours now.
Yeah.
Conversation is done. And listen, get on the road if you can. Protest if you can. If you cannot, get on social media. Call a friend. Because we're very silly to share all kind of joke things. Yeah. Right? The great thing about this is that the conversation is no longer as uncomfortable as it used to be before.
That's it.
Yes.
Having it with white folks. It's out open now. So let's please have these conversations, because They've been listening to confusion for so long that it has started to make sense to them.
Yeah.
We need to have them seek the spaces in their thought to unlearn everything that they've been taught, and see us for who we are and move together. Because America is a wonderful experiment. Black and white people can see each other as equal. It's a wonderful experiment to have all these people. Because the man who came and decided Manhattan was only going to be numbers and not names, he was looking at a little bit of unity because he wanted everybody to understand the numbers. We can be true to that, man. We can be better than this. Yep. We can have a wonderful world in music.
I just wanted. I heard this early on the news today, and it says America has an open wound that needs to heal. Yep. And hopefully, this is the beginning of our healing.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Agreed, Karen. Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, look, it's been a fascinating, inspirational, educational conversation this afternoon. Whenever you bring Caribbean people together, there's always a perspective that you will hear that will inspire you, and that's what I've loved this afternoon. Just you've got varied experiences, but at the heart and foundation of the three of you is a Caribbean person. Someone who wants to do good in the world, share some love, have some laughter along the way, but be inspiring.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
That's who we are.
That's who we are.
People. That's who we are as a people. Absolutely.
That's who we are as a people. Yeah. Look, guys. Oh, seriously, I can't believe 2 hours is gone already. That's the honestly, we can probably carry on this conversation for another 2. So, I know the guys would agree at some point. Even as we look at this journey, because let's. I don't want to say that we starting now because we know this journey started a long time before. But let's say this is a reset. At the moment, let's say this is a reset. I think we should come back together at some point during this reset period and have this conversation and see what's happening. And just even if we just explore what's happening since this last few weeks, we got to do it. Yeah. And I hope you guys will be willing to come back to do that.
Oh, yeah. I'm in.
Fantastic. Molly's saying no, don't leave. Sorry. Sorry, Molly.
Molly, my stomach. I'm hungry, Molly.
Yeah, we gotta eat.
Caribbean people love to eat, so I'm ready.
You gotta eat. I agree. So look, thank you guys. We just have a little wrap up at the end, but look, thank you guys. It's been so, I can't even say it's been so educational for me to listen to y'all experiences. Even the conversations you're having with your sons, the courage to come on and speak to the world about it. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone is willing to do that and expose themselves in that way. So I really want to just thank you guys for that. It's been a fascinating conversation. And from the comments I'm seeing strolling up, from Doriel saying, very thought-provoking. Thank you for that, Doriel. Karen is saying, love the idea, Dre. Okay, we'll keep doing that, Karen, as well. We're just going to keep having more conversations. So, thank you guys for joining us. I really, 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 really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
All right, thank you guys. Okay, see you guys later. Bye-bye. Well, guys.
Wow. Tremendous.
That was just fascinating, thought-provoking, inspiring. I could find so many different superlatives, which Philip would be happy to hear me using. I'm
excited about that.
Not interested
to describe that conversation. It's just been a really eye-opener, and I think it's a conversation that we need to have, and don't be afraid to have either. As well, when we started, we said, we want to have Caribbean conversations about how Caribbean people are doing all over the world, and there are things and moments that are happening all over the world that are impacting Caribbean people. We're not isolated from it because our people are all over the world. We say everywhere you go, you find a Bajan. I'm sure the Jamaicans have the exact same saying. The Dominicans have the same saying. St. Lucia, everyone has the same saying. So wherever you go, you find a West Indian. So I think this was an important conversation to have.
Yeah, a thought that came to me while we were there is not just that it's a concern for us, but I'm starting to get the sense we could be really part of the solution because of our experience, the different mindset we might bring to the whole dynamic. There could be a role for people from the Caribbean contributing to unpicking some of these nuts and bolts of racism around the globe.
Yeah.
So it'd be good if we step up to our place. Definitely.
Yeah, and no single race is going to be able to do it on their own. You know,
No.
we have to have conversations with ourselves as Black people about how we need to re-educate ourselves in certain areas. You know, that Dukes of Hazzard thing is just something that frustrated me, and that's why I mentioned it in the show. But at the same time, we can't leave white people over here to have conversation with themselves. There has to be an integration of conversation to try and help us all to, as Phil rightfully said in the show, to incrementally move things on, get it to a place where our sons and daughters who are coming behind us have a better place to land in and take forward. So I was blown away by the level of input from all three guests today.
Yeah, it was amazing. And I mean, we talk about the global village, and it is that. And if we say that the global village is such and we are part of it, which we are, and I think Caribbean people, we bring our own input, positive input into the Caribbean village as well, then it means that things that happen even outside the region impact us as well. We travel all over the place. You know, I said at the very beginning, American culture is really exportable. So people look to them, and things and the way how they see America treat us, other countries might feel it's okay. So that's why we need to add our voice to the conversation. And we need to say, no, it's not okay. You know, and as Mark was saying, people from all kind of races, as we saw when I went into London, and I'm sure you saw the same thing up in Birmingham. There were people of all different races.
Absolutely.
In this march.
Yes.
Who am I to step back and say it's nothing to do with me when it actually has everything to do with me?
Absolutely. Yeah. If there's one more thing that I can say before you close is listen, we've had a fantastic audience today.
Yeah.
Lots of people joining us from all over the world who were actively taking part in the conversation, and I really just want to say a huge thank you for being a part of our first live. We're back next Sunday, live again. And we'll be having another conversation, and we want you to continue to come and be a part of it, because conversations and talking is going to be an important instrument in how we take change forward in this season.
Yeah, and we must not shy away from it.
No,
absolutely.
Do not shy away from it and think that leave it to others to do. We can't. That's, I keep saying, that's the biggest conviction for me, is we got to get in the conversation, get in the trenches, and be part of the solution as well, and help push for what we want. You know, we got to be there. So guys, if you haven't already, if you're watching on someone else's page or what's not, who shared it, join us on Twitter, join us on Facebook at We Global Media. You know, go find us on Facebook and just like the page, share the page as well. We're on YouTube, and we are definitely on Instagram as well. So, you know, you can find us on any one of those mediums, and you'll see content there, and hopefully you enjoy it, and hopefully you can join the conversation with us as we look to tell Caribbean stories from around the world and inside the Caribbean, and just make it a norm. Make it a norm, us having conversations. Make it a norm, us being in the global conversation, you know, of people, and speaking about ourselves and presenting ourselves in a light that maybe people never seen before. Yeah. So we want to thank you for that. So with that, we say our very first live show, and you guys have been a part of history. So thank you very much. With that, we say good evening.
Good night.
Yeah, boy.
Wow. That was good.
Again, eat some rice and peas here now.
Lord, have
rice and peas.
Or
peas and rice, depends on how you call it, you know.
Black eyed peas too.
Wow.